Hello, I'm Chad Larson.
And I'm Barry Berg.
Welcome to Setting the Standard, Conversations with the Berg Larsen Group, a podcast where we discuss questions that are top of mind for upper bracket home buyers and sellers in the Twin Cities Metro. Welcome, episode 3 in our series on perennial wisdoms. This is part 1 of Plant the 2 Ps, pricing and presentation. And so today we're going to talk about pricing.
Well, as we start to talk about pricing, it's helpful to think about what are buyers looking for. Probably nothing matters to them, all things considered, as much as condition of the property. And, we'll talk about this at greater length, but everything you can do to present your home as favorably as possible is really critical. They're also looking for amenities and location. Buyers tend to make decisions based on school district or schooling if they've got children. They also like to have relative proximity to amenities and comfort and services. What we find is that they are as sensitive to the quality of space as to the quantity of space. So size can be both an asset and a liability.
Right up until a particular point.
Yes.
Pricing.
Yes.
So they can have a long list, and we've seen buyers throw away the list to buy a particular home because they fell in love with it. But the one thing that often keeps coming back is the price, right? They have been looking in the marketplace. They are the arbiters of value. And when they show up to your front door and their agent gets them to walk in the door, they love it. And then what's the price again? They know what the price is, and they may not like yours.
Yeah. Bear in mind that it's rare that that somebody looking at your home that it's the first house that they're looking at. There always has to be a first home for a buyer. But by the time most buyers have seen your home, they have seen plenty of other properties. And so pricing is really very critical. We spend a great deal of time. I never give anybody feedback when I first walk through a house, and they've called me over to take a look at it, and they're thinking of going to the market, it's natural for me to get asked a question as I'm leaving, well, what do you think my home is worth? I consistently decline just saying, hey, I have a good sense for where I think your value is, but I want to step back and make sure that I'm looking at it in the context of the market. And that context of the market is such, it's far more critical at what price have certain homes sold for, homes that might be viewed as comparable to yours, not what are they listed for, because we see properties priced all over the map, and they're not necessarily going to sell based on a given list price.
Absolutely. Definitely about the sold price.
Right?
It's helpful to look at active listings to see what the competition is, right? What
Very
are they
important.
up against in terms of what other properties might a potential buyer be looking at. But when it really comes to what do we believe the value of your home to be, it's really going to be based on those sold properties.
And we're taking into consideration a lot of factors. In fact, probably one of the least relevant factors is that of price per square foot. And I say that because unless you have a brand new home and something that has just been built and every other house
in
is
the same,
identical,
and even then it would have to be in the same
builder,
neighborhood.
exactly, but have to be. There are way too many other factors. And we're dealing with a lot of properties that are 20, 30, 40, 80, 90 years old. And so lots of changes have been made over time.
Yeah, and so I think when we were talking about the showing that you're going to get on your property and you want to make that great first impression, here too, pricing is so important. A little like Hamilton, right? Don't throw away your shot. Right. You want to make sure that when you put your home on the market, it's at the right price, because buyers, that's when they're going to be most likely to be interested, right? They've been waiting for the right house to come on the market. And when yours pops up in their feed, you want them to think, ooh, wow, that's a great price. Well, what a great home. What a great location. That is everything I want.
One of the axioms of the business and an expression we use and you'll hear realtors use all the time, is first offer, best offer. That means that whoever the party is who comes to the table first with an offer is probably prepared to pay a better price than anyone else. And it doesn't mean that the offer as presented is their best shot. And we often will hear agents say, well, this is the buyer's best offer. That doesn't necessarily mean it is the best offer. So it's really critical to work with a buyer that way, assuming they've come in at a reasonable level, because we probably aren't going to see a better offer down the road.
And to that point, right? Yeah. And especially when it's fresh to the market, right? Because they've been that buyer, especially if they've been out there, if they meet the relative buyer profile of the home, right? So sometimes if you got 10 kids and it's a 3-bedroom home and they're making an offer, maybe that's not quite the right fit. But for the right buyer at the right time, someone who's been looking, and they make an offer, might be low, but it could be the right buyer. And so we've made counter offers of $1 or some other nominal sum and still ended up making a deal
together. Right.
And I think that's where, it's both first offer, best offer. It's also, don't look an offer in the mouth, so to speak, right? You want to negotiate with every party to try to get to the right value.
However, I think it's also important. This is perhaps unique to Minnesota, but we all know the expression Minnesota nice.
Yes.
I have probably, in my 40-plus years in the business, met 5 sellers or homeowners who thought their home was worth less than I did. Everybody thinks it's worth more. And, of course, their neighbors are always telling them they've got the best house. But having said that, please understand that it's really critical where you price the home, because you could have the best house in the community, but if you're overpriced, you're not going to get offers, or you're just rarely going to get an offer, because buyers do not like to insult a seller. They, Minnesota nice, they or their agent are going to discourage them from coming in.
How many times have we had clients who we've taken into a house? They love it. They think it's great. We talk about price, and they're like, "Oh no, we should probably keep looking, because the price I would want to pay would be less than this, and I don't want to offend." And I'm not from Minnesota, so I can say, "Oh no, let's just make an offer that's reasonable." Oh no, I couldn't possibly. And so, sellers are losing out, as are the buyers.
Well, and it's human nature to want to get the best value. I mean, we never have a seller who says, well, I just want to get it sold. Every seller wants to get the best value you can, but please understand, we're also going to try to give you our best recommendation as to where we feel the market will support your property.
Well, and I think that's where, too, when we talk about the neighbors, right? Mm-hmm. Your neighbor isn't the expert. Mm-hmm. We have been doing this a long time, so maybe we can call ourselves that. But, whenever the neighbors, we hear from our sellers, right, that their neighbors think how great the house is, what they think about is how great the house is for you, right? That fits your style, whether you have the purple walls or the chintz wallpaper that we've talked about, right? And let's also remember that your neighbors, when they walk out the door, they want you to get that elevated price because theirs is better. Yeah. And that means that if you can get a great price for your home, they can get that better one. But it's really not about that. We want to get your home sold for the right price as fast as possible. And that's how you get the best value.
And we will talk about this as well, but it's very, very critical when we talk about pricing your home for the market. You need to do everything you can to present that home favorably, or you're going to be sitting on the market for a year or two and languishing, when you're a perfectly good house, but you need to do what you can to sell to somebody else.
Perfect segue, Barry. We're going to talk about that in part 2. So stay tuned for the 2 Ps, pricing and presentation, the presentation segment. Thank you.